can be such a pain at times, they may end up dealing 2, 3, or 4 hits of damage before you're able to get one off. Thankfully, you can destroy their fire with your own fire, so that's a little bit of a help, and you're gonna really need that in order to survive. These force fields have to be hit multiple times in order to destroy them. Also, of course, when you're destroying that force field, be very careful that you don't accidentally shoot your health in case you really need it. I guess the only thing really good about this whole section is the fact that the walls don't end up hurting us. Because if they hurt us, this whole section would probably be impossible to get through. If you could at least stop for a couple of seconds, you could aim your shots up a lot better, but really what it comes down to, and what you have to practice, is getting your targets on the move. Aiming your ship up in the right direction that you're going to need, and then just waiting for you to slowly hover to the right spot so you can actually inflict damage to what's hurting you. But by doing this half the time, you're going to end up taking either shots of damage from things, or running into other enemies as you're trying to hit certain other ones farther away. Right here, this piece of health is impossible to actually get. If you run up into the section where it is, you'll just bounce off the wall, and you won't be able to get the health, so there's no point of it being there. It's just really bad programming. One of the worst things, though, about the health that's located in this whole stage is the fact that they actually like to put multiple pieces of health together. So you'll be in a section, you'll get one piece of health, and then just a second later, they like to put another piece of health sometimes. So instead of spreading it out a little bit more so you have more chance of survival, they end up clustering 2 and sometimes 3 together, which ends up just being a huge waste. The keys to really getting better are learning how to take out these enemies, the ones on the ceiling as well as the ones on the bottom. Thankfully, they can only fire in 2 separate directions, to the left diagonal and to the right diagonal, and they can't fire straight down at you, but still trying to hit them at those points is extremely annoying. The ones that are located in the far walls like these are really a pain to hit, because you're either going to have to be at the far bottom or in the right spot diagonally going through these caves in order to actually hit them. Here's an example of when they give you multiple pieces of health in the same section. Here we have some more of the asteroids that join up the party, along with some more of their spaceships that come from the left side of the wall. Be careful that you're not too far on the left wall so they end up instantly running into you as you defeat these asteroids. Once the whole area finally opens back up, you're in a lot more space, and it's just a few more asteroids before we actually get to the boss of this whole stage, so we actually can complete it. Once the boss is fully in the center of the screen, and then starts firing at you, you'll actually be able to do damage to it. You have to hit the center of it, so just hover slowly around it, pointing in the right directions when you can in order to actually defeat most of its fire and the enemies that it launches out at you. There's no real point of speeding up or moving in any certain direction, just let the game control itself as you're moving around. It doesn't take too many hits of fire to actually defeat it. Once you see a couple of sparks from it, you know you've beaten it, and you get the next key. With 3 of the minigames taken care of, we have only 1 left before we can finally save Miss Piggy. And this one is the Amazing Maze. There's really nothing amazing about the mazes located. They're very simple to navigate, as you control Fozzy Bear, as he must collect different objects from each cave in order to move on to the next one. In each of these screens, you must collect 2 bow ties and a present in order to move on to the next one. So you collect 1 bow tie, then a present, and then another bow tie in order to move on. Your goal is, of course, to avoid any of these enemies as they're moving around the maze as well. They come in whatever direction you are, so some of them can be very annoying as you're trying to navigate through. It takes a little bit of practice, and the controls aren't perfect. No surprise there. Sometimes when you'll try to hug either right or left, or move up or down, you'll end up sliding along the wall and going into an opposite direction than you wanted to. There's 30 total mazes to make your way through, and there's a few different enemies to see as you're continuing through the mazes. The worst thing, though, probably, is there's no way to get any more health until you actually complete the whole section, and that's a real pain. There is a couple objects to aid you, though, including the bone that you can see here on this screen. If you pick it up and throw it, it'll cause the enemy on screen to go towards it and get out of your path for a couple seconds. You can also pick up hearts, which can stun your enemies on screen. However, it's really hard to hit, and I've actually never been able to do anything with them. Much later on as well, there's a banana peel, which can stun enemies as well and slow them up, so that you can move through the next area. You start off with only 1 enemy on screen, but eventually you'll get 2 enemies on screen, followed by a moving candy cane which can damage you, and then fake walls. Once you get to the fake walls part, though, the 2 moving enemies are actually made into 1 giant enemy that moves around slowly, and it's really easier to contend with than the enemies that we're currently dealing with. The worst thing about these enemies is that it can hit you if they just run into the sprite at any point. Meaning, even though I'm walking on a single spot, if they run into my head, I'll still take damage, even though technically they didn't run into my spot exactly. It would have been nice to at least include a counter to tell you how many mazes you've already gone through, so it's easier to keep track of how many more that you need to go through. Once you're in the middle of this whole thing, it's gonna feel almost endless when you're trying to make your way through these mazes. It gets so boring and so repetitive so fast that you're gonna want to probably just turn off the game or take a short nap while playing. You can only carry 1 projectile at a time, so if you have a bone in your hand, you can't pick up any of the other objects. Once you throw it, though, of course you lose it, and there's no way to keep track and tell if you actually have one equipped until you actually press the throw button. Since the bones appear the most often, they're easily the most effective in terms of trying to get the enemies to go in certain directions so that you can move on. The only real way to tell that you're progressing very fast is the fact that new enemies appear and the colors of these ice creams change color. The moving candy canes that have now been introduced in this maze are really easy to deal with as long as you don't run directly into them. They do move